One of the most fun, most lovable Rolex watches is all but guaranteed to disappear this year. And you may have noticed that another one already has. There's also a GMT that could be replaced with an even better anniversary edition. Tudor certainly has some watches they could afford to lose. Vacheron needs to cut one of their model lines entirely. Patek has quietly discontinued a handful of references leading up to Watches and Wonders. We'll discuss how Omega's 30 years of James Bond watches could affect their lineup, and a whole lot more. This is the video where the comment section is going to be particularly important. Together, we can crowdsource the prediction process and let the best guess win. Speaking of predictions, sometimes you get lucky. I said 2025 would be an opportune time for a Vacheron 222 in steel, and it happened. I also said Omega should bring back the Flightmaster in an updated form, and we got that as well. Now, to be completely fair, I have been saying these things for quite a while, so really, it was only a matter of time, but it feels good nonetheless. Today, we're looking at not only the new releases we'll likely see this year, with quite a lot of anniversaries on the calendar, but we're also naming the watches that might not survive 2025. The watch industry can function on a bit of a one-in, one-out policy. So for every new release we're given, it's reasonable to assume that some old favorites will be taken away. This, for better or for worse, has major implications for brands like Patek, Rolex, Omega, Tudor, and others. I'm Thomas Hendricks with Chrono24, and if you want to see the collector interviews, the deep dives, and industry coverage we have coming up, just click on that subscribe button. Patek has already discontinued a handful of references leading up to Watches and Wonders. You'd think they do it on the day they announce the new releases, but keen observers have noticed that some are already missing from the brand's website. We're talking about classics like the steel Nautilus 5712 that could easily be replaced with the white gold 5812G. The Aquanaut 5167 on a bracelet is gone too, and it'll be interesting to see if that gets reincarnated somehow. The Pilot Travel Time 5524G has disappeared, thank God, but I'm sad to see the 5208R get cut. It's such a handsome combination of black and rose gold. And I'm not even a rose gold fan. And for whatever reason, the 5370P split second chronograph is gone as well. It's highly revered by collectors, and prices for this watch are already sky high, so I'm curious to see how the dust settles. Oh, and also the blinged out Nautilus 5719 is gone, but I don't think any watch nerds like us are going to cry about it. That's kind of a big list already, but we could see even more on the chopping block from Patek by the time Watches and Wonders kicks off in April. It's the 150th anniversary of Audemars Piguet.
Hey, Future Thomas here. AP actually released new watches since we recorded the other parts of the video, so now we're cutting in to reshoot some things, and let's take a look at what they came out with this year already. 2025 is the 150th anniversary of AP, and I was going to say that maybe we'll get some sort of perpetual calendar Royal Oak, maybe some sort of souped up offshore, and a new code 1159 to provide an option outside of the Royal Oak. That all turned out to be true, but honestly, AP is the easiest brand to make predictions for because their model lineup is so focused. So if you were to guess that they would do more of the same but better, you would also be correct. The new releases include new perpetual calendars in both Royal Oak and the code 1159. These are based around the new caliber 7138, which controls all of the perpetual calendar functions via the crown. AP is certainly not the first brand to do this, that goes to IWC, but it's a nice upgrade that does away with all the mysterious pushers and styluses needed. However, I think what we'll remember most about these watches are the refined color palettes. I mean, I just love this sand gold alloy that they have. Now, the new Code 1159s might not be top sellers, but they feel like a step in the right direction for this model, and I think the community in general is starting to warm up to these watches. Also, the new ceramic offshore chronographs are sick if you're into that sort of thing. The ceramic makes the watches feel lighter on the wrist, but the price tag is heavy. Now, the only thing I would add for perhaps later in the year would be another revitalized archival design through their remaster program. The two we've seen so far have been pretty divisive, but there are plenty more great models in the attic to pull from. My best guess would be that we'll see one, maybe two of these designs reemerge for the 150th anniversary. Now, in terms of discontinuations, we shouldn't expect too much. AP does have a relatively new CEO in place as of about a year ago, and that person could shake things up a bit. It's also easier to subtract existing watches than it is to add new ones. Okay, now back to past Thomas, the guy with the glasses.
Omega is celebrating 30 years of its James Bond collaboration, and you know Omega never misses a marketing opportunity. It's going to be a minute before we get another James Bond film, but you can bet we will be seeing some sort of 007 themed watch from Omega in the coming months. In terms of discontinuations, Omega is a company that seems comfortable with having a lot of watches for sale at any given time. Editor-in-chief of Fratello Watches and Omega enthusiast Robert Jan Brewer thinks the Globe Master Collection is a bit stagnant and could get cut. If any collection is going to go, that feels like the most likely candidate. Honestly, though, I think they might adjust their production numbers for various references behind the scenes based on 2024 sales, while still offering a wide range in their catalog. Before we get to Rolex and Tudor, let's talk about Vacheron. It's the brand's 270th anniversary this year. And while that's not as significant as, say, 250 or 275, you can expect to see more releases beyond just the Steel 222. A likely scenario would be a highly technical, highly complicated super watch that's done more for symbolism than for sales. There are plenty of vintage models they could bring back that we covered in our Vacheron deep dive, but let's not hold our breath. And if they do discontinue the old to make way for the new, I have an idea. The Vacheron Constantin 56th collection feels too safe, or at least not special enough for a brand like this. It's not a watch that you see or hear about often, and if they are looking to trim some fat for whatever reason, this could be an easy place to do it. I would certainly welcome a reimagined starter Vacheron, for lack of a better term, but then they would need to discontinue the 56 first to avoid any redundancy. Think about it, if VC had their own version of the Datejust, that is, a relatively approachable, everyday luxury piece, it would be well received. It would be like the 56, but with, I don't know, a little more sauce. But realistically, introducing an entirely new model family is not something that established brands do often, and they might not be interested in making less expensive watches. Tudor's a tough one. There are quite a few watches they could discontinue that would focus the catalog more, but the question is more if they want to do that. The Pelagos LHD is a great example. These watches with the crown on the left are numbered and therefore limited. And it's only a matter of time before Tudor decides to enforce that limit. Dressier options like the Tudor Royal, the 1926, the Claire de Rose would be easy to cut as well. They're not ones that watch enthusiasts really think about, but they could be selling well among normal people. The Black Bay P01 is one of the most divisive watches in the industry. It's been the stepchild of the Black Bay family since it was introduced, and Tudor could decide to cut it out of the catalog sooner or later. To a certain extent, I also feel that time is running out for the Black Bay Bronze and the BB58 in silver. I happen to like them, but they don't feel like watches that Tudor will produce forever, and it's already been a few years. Lastly, and most interestingly, let's talk about the bright blue and pink Black Bay Chronos. These Miami editions are fun and colorful, but the party can't go on forever. Rolex has a habit of doing rather short production runs for anything that's a little more out there. We'll talk about them in just a minute. And why wouldn't Tudor do the same? The blue and pink feel kind of like ice cream flavors that are only on the menu for a limited time. 2025 would be too soon to discontinue them, but there's no way the factory pumps these out for more than, say, 3 years. This brings us to Rolex. If you've been paying really close attention, you'll know that the Crown has already been quietly removing watches from its website. And those moves give us clues as to what else they'll take offline. If you Google the Rolex puzzle date, you know, the one with emojis and words of affirmation where the useful stuff should be, you'll see that the only thing left is the press release. The brand does not announce when watches get discontinued. We just have to figure this stuff out ourselves. That watch was released 2 years ago, and now it's gone. They did a similar thing last year with the Palm Dial JHS 3 years after they were released. The colorful dial OPs, including the yellow and the Tiffany blue, those were gone after only 1 year. These discontinuations point to some other likely discontinuations on the horizon. You know the Celebration Dial Oyster Perpetual. That's been around for 2 years already, and the life expectancy for any of the more out there dials is not looking too optimistic. Even the Air King is rumored to be in danger. It's another more adventurous dial choice and arguably the most expendable Rolex model that doesn't provide something super unique compared to similar and more established models like the Explorer or the Oyster Perpetual. Now let's talk about what could happen with the GMT lineup. 2025 is the 70th anniversary of the Rolex GMT. We've had more new GMT releases than expected in recent years, but you could also assume they'll do something for the anniversary. The speculation so far seems to be hoping for either a platinum GMT or maybe a return of the red and black Coke bezel. Rolex typically keeps a tight catalog compared to nearly every other major watch brand, and if they did want or need to get rid of an existing GMT to free up some space, which one do you think they'd choose? If we're following the earlier logic that more experimental watches have shorter lifespans, then the love it or hate it Sprite GMT would be the most likely contender. All we can tell you is get your scorecards ready because it's going to be a wild year. I know you've got predictions for what you want to see or expect to see this year, so drop it in a comment below.